30,000 federal workers are earning nearly $200,000 a year. That's more than 3 times what the average private sector worker makes. So, John, you say it's time for taxpayers to demand that we clean up this costly swamp.
Yeah, this is terrible for taxpayers because every dollar the federal government spends is more control over the economy, but it's also bad for federal workers. Working for the federal government is about doing a job that never involves being fired, and so you lack the stresses and strains that cause you to evolve. And also, it's supposed to be about sacrificial public service. This is not about sacrifice.
Capri, there's nothing sacrificial about making $200,000 a year if you're federal. No. And by the way, it's not only compared to the private sector. You know how many governors make that much?
I know.
Zero.
Yeah.
Governors make as much as almost 30,000 federal employees.
It is pretty incredible. And look, anytime that tax dollars are at stake, the American people deserve answers and transparency on how those dollars are being spent. But we do have to remember that in order to attract, quality individuals within the government, at the end of the day, people need to make money. They need to earn a living. And, in places like Washington, D.C., the cost of living is incredibly high. I think what we really need to look at is what are these positions that are getting this kind of money? Right. Do they warrant that kind of money? I mean, is it the head of an agency that has, hundreds of employees that are answering to that individual? Or is it something that is obscure that may be a position that needs to be eliminated? But again, we have to remember, if we want government to act like business, it needs to be as competitive as business in order to get that kind of talent to come into the government.
Yeah, but EMAC, it's not just the top cream of the crop federal workers that are getting paid that much. Days off, average federal workers' days off, it comes up to 43. That's 8.5 weeks of paid time off. You don't get that anywhere in the private sector.
Are we talking about France here, or are we talking about the U.S.? I'm just kidding. But, I think 8 years ago I may have said something about trickle-down government. With our government is way too big. There are too many people working there doing nothing. And the people who have the time off, David, it doesn't even count the people sitting on their couches working for the federal government at home, working from home on union duties full-time. I mean, that's a big problem, too.
Steve, I know we need to get the best people working in the public sector, but at the same time, even when we do and pay them all this much money, the public sector doesn't seem to be working all that well, does it?
Of course not, David, because there's no market discipline. When you're in private sector and you do that kind of behavior, you go out of business. So all the reforms they put in, we're going to run it like a business, won't work because there's not that pressure. By the way, each year they evaluate federal employees, and if you don't give them the highest rating, you have a union fight. So there's no accountability.
And Rich, bonuses. We haven't talked about bonuses. $350 million a year in bonuses to federal workers, and that included people like Lois Werner, who was focusing on, all of the conservative political groups she could. Quickly.
Well, I think the issue is you can't fire the mediocre ones or the crappy ones. But, when it comes to cybersecurity and issues like that, we probably should be paying more to attract the kind of talent that would otherwise go to Amazon or Google.
I'm so sorry. We only have 10 seconds. Go ahead, quickly.
Right. Well, Steve took the words out of my mouth. I actually don't want people with great talent leaving the private sector to go to the public sector. There's no market there. We're never going to actually behave this way.
Good way to button it up. Thank you very much. Coming up.